Okay, so welcome back, everyone, and again, appreciate the opportunity to be here today with you to talk about airport design and accessible airports, the way forward. So we've seen before the break how airports are working very hard to be examples of inclusion where every traveler feels valued, respected, and empowered. Airports should be enabling everyone, regardless of their ability, to enjoy air travel. And so this way, airports can enhance the customer experience, can enhance the loyalty and the repeat of business. So we have put together this panel for you today to listen on how we can share our best practices, what we have learned in the past years around accessibility, around assistance to passengers with disabilities, and providing such facilities as accessible kiosks, priority lanes at security screening points, self-service initiatives, independence using technology, using new innovations that are made available to the passengers for their overall travel experience. So I'm joined today by, I mentioned earlier, by several speakers from airports and from the consultancy world. And I have a list of questions here. We wanted to make this more interactive, so not really a presentation per se, but more an interactive session around the topic. And my first question would be for Duncan from Abu Dhabi Airports. So do you think widening connectivity and faster inclusion at airports is helping travel and tourism to grow? What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Good. Yeah, I mean, in short, I definitely believe that. I think, you know, especially in the region we're in, we're very lucky to have, you know, a huge connectivity to the world, both through ourselves in Abu Dhabi and our friends here in Dubai. And that can only be a great thing for accessible travel and tourism. You know, as an example, down in Abu Dhabi, we obviously, we're lucky to have Yas Island, and the expansion that you know, we've kind of witnessed there over the years, most recent years, from, you know, starting off with, you know, the F1 circuit and Yas Mall, Ferrari World, and then obviously moving through the additions of the additional theme parks, Warner Brothers, and obviously the case is almost proven now with Disney announcing coming to Abu Dhabi. So, you know, I firmly believe that the likes of an organization such as Disney would not choose to set up in Abu Dhabi if it did not feel that the connections by air are available to people around the world. So, you know, it's hugely important that, you know, airports such as ourselves make our airports accessible and welcoming for everybody, because it's you know, it's just a great thing for the region, brings investment, and you know, allows the Emirates to show themselves off to the world. You know, other examples in the region, obviously you've seen the exponential growth of Dubai as a, you know, as not just a connecting hub, but as a destination, a tourism destination. We've seen Qatar with the FIFA World Cup, and obviously the ambitious projects that are taking place in Saudi. So yeah, I definitely think connectivity, inclusion can only be a good thing.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for giving us some insights about what is happening at your airport in Abu Dhabi. Bouncing on this answer, I'd like to ask now Kirk and then Pia to talk to us about how airports are helping people with disabilities, people with of determination to enjoy travel and tourism. Based on your experience, Kirk, maybe to start, as your experience in in airports and now for a consultancy in this area.
Yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. And I know we have the unenviable position of going immediately after lunch, where everyone is very tired. But we'll try to make this as enlightening as possible. But great question, and I think there's been a ton of great work since the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities came into effect in 2006, followed by a whole range of states enacting new regulations to support people with disabilities. And I'm a firm believer and supporter of regulation to provide that baseline. We heard this morning from Linda and others that obviously the industry needs to go above and beyond regulation, but it's important to drive consistency. And one of the things that we hear a lot from people with disabilities is the lack of consistency across the aviation ecosystem. So I think it's no surprise for me to see that the countries in which there's a robust regulatory framework, you typically have the highest maturity level of accessibility programming at airports. So what I would argue, though, is that the opportunity is to connect a little bit more the destination marketing organizations to the actual airport. There's a lot of what I call consequence management of doing great work. I don't want to detract from the work that's being done in terms of providing adult changing facilities, providing service animal relief areas and sensory rooms, among many other things. But a lot of that is managing the consequence and not necessarily connecting in a systemic way to destination marketing organizations. Airports are still focused on how to deliver the best possible service and facilities to people, not yet branching out. And I'd love to get Pia's perspective on this.
Yeah, I think you raised some great points here. I think we just have to see airports as part of the tourism ecosystem, and that's what they are. You know, for a lot of travelers, they'll be the first and the last impression of a destination. And if you talk about your holiday, you're not going to say, well, this is the checklist. The airport was great, but the hotel wasn't. And then the public transport wasn't, and this museum wasn't. You know, you think about it as your holiday, and it's this package where so many different stakeholders have to come together to make sure that you have an accessible experience. And like Kirk said, I think having destination marketing organizations in that mix and sort of leading the conversation on how do we ensure that the entire destination, including its airport, is accessible is really the key.
Moving to your left, we will speak with Fatma, who is with us today, and wanted to ask you, is accessible tourism getting promoted enough by airports globally? What are your thoughts about promotion of accessibility by airports?
I think airports worldwide are doing such a great job working closely with IATA, ACI, ICAO, and other agencies, other global entities. However, from my lived-in experience working very closely with the community is that no matter how much promotion we do, it's never enough. So us as Dubai Airports, we work very closely across the communities. We have an airport community called 1DXB. It's consisting of over 20 entities and growing across the aviation sector, tourism sector, and onto the city, the POD community, and government entities. So we try to work as a whole community. We utilize all the different channels. So there is the social media channel, the websites, and then we have a lot of one-on-one conversations with certain communities where we even leverage smaller communities like moms of POD kids, for example. So the intention is to reach to as many people as possible through different means and channels. I'm happy to say that we've just announced that we work with strategic ambassadors. Okay. Yep. So I think that would be such a great opportunity to leverage even more communities within the disability group and take that message across.
Maybe I'll bounce on that question. What are the responsibilities or the roles of those ambassadors actually?
Okay, so they're more like advisors. So they do not just promote the values and the different products and services and the offering within Dubai Airports. What they do is work as specialists and experts. They map the journey with us. They map the service offering. We sit with the stakeholders on certain workshops to dissect the whole journey, see what works, what needs improvement, and what are the opportunities that we can take forward.
Okay, excellent. Well, I haven't heard enough, a lot about those ambassadors around the world, so I think it's probably one of the first ones to do this over here. Kirk, same question. Do you think accessible tourism is getting promoted enough by airports globally? With your on, what are your views on promoting?
I would say it's quite inconsistent depending on the region in which you're living and, and operating. So I'm from Toronto. I'm from Canada, and certainly there is a large disconnect from and between aviation stakeholders and marketing organizations. And indeed, I would go one step further and say within certain airports, there's a big disconnect between this type of conversation that we're having about accessibility and taking it out of its operations or passenger experience context and bringing it into air service development or commercial agreements between airlines, airports, and potentially hotels in a very systemic way. But it's clear that it is inconsistent. Dubai is doing a phenomenal job in this respect, and one need only go and look at the expo floor to see that level of commitment from government, and it's phenomenal to see. But I think it's quite inconsistent, and really it depends on where you are operating in the world.
I wanted to add one
Yes,
more
please.
point. I think in Dubai we work very well with the government. We work very closely with Dubai Economy and Tourism, and one of the main success stories is a city, airport, and an airline all being the first certified autism center. So we have the first destination, Dubai. Then we are the first airport to be certified as autism-friendly airport. Emirates Airlines first certified airline. So I think within this region and within Dubai, we work very closely together, coming to the point of community. And that is the essence, I think, and the backbone of how we do accessibility here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for adding on to this answer. You've mentioned autism. You've mentioned some of the services offered. But one question that we can ask ourselves, and I'll turn to Duncan first, and then Kirk, is should all airports provide inclusive spaces such as the sensory rooms or adapting waiting environments, calming rooms, adapting common areas for waiting environments to cater for the needs of a greater neurodivergent population? So is this one size fits all? We're seeing a lot of sensory rooms being built, but what are your thoughts about these spaces, and what are your community groups telling you? So Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, we recently opened a sensory space, which we have 2 rooms and a reception area, which we've seen kind of exponential growth in users, especially over the summer, which has been fantastic to see. And that falls into what you're saying about community. It's reaching out to local organisations. And just getting the message out, whether that's over social media or via organisations that we work with. So, for example, we collaborate with CEDRA, who's just over there, hello, and another organisation, NECC. And we also work with Zayed Higher Organisation. And similar to Dubai, we work quite closely with government entities such as the Department of Community Development. So that all helps push the awareness that these facilities are available. Now, having said that, I do believe that all airports should make best endeavours, but obviously airports are businesses. They have budgets to kind of to reach, and but I think it needs to get to a point where I think the universal design aspects come into it. So it shouldn't be a nice to have. It should just be expected. But like I say, one size fits all. It's a very difficult kind of concept to put across for airports, I think, because each airport will have a different demographic of passenger. It will have different airlines. I want to have different demands on facilities, but yeah, very, very much so. I think if airports are in a position to make those changes, and it doesn't have to be a huge cost. You can make small amendments that make the journey easier, and there's plenty of organizations out there in the community that can help you with that. So I think it's I would say, best endeavors, I would say, is probably the best way to say it. Yeah.
Describe it, yes. What about you, Kirk? You have experience in creating those areas, or suggesting airports to do that or not to do that. So what do you think about sensory rooms?
Yeah, so I have to say that my thinking on multisensory environments or sensory rooms has changed, evolved over time quite a bit, partly driven by my own lived experience as a caregiver, and then, of course, in the professional work that I do in aviation accessibility. And I would say one size does not fit all, let's say that. And when airports often ask, like, should we incorporate a sensory room, or what should a sensory room look like? It really comes down to what problem or what barrier are they trying to solve. So in existing infrastructure, some of the things that I hear is it's very congested, the acoustics are bad, glare is an issue, reflection, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly quite a few stimuli to deal with. And so maybe in that case, there's an opportunity to look at sensory rooms or quiet spaces. But if an airport is in a position to design net new, so certainly in this region, there's a lot of infrastructure design going on right now. I would strongly encourage, as Duncan pointed out, adopting that universal design approach, really looking at the ways in which you can incorporate proper acoustics and really focus on lighting, glare, and these other stimuli that are currently just not a focus area in a lot of airports worldwide. So my thinking has changed. I think it really is a case-by-case basis and really depends on the airport. The last point I'll say, just on this particular question, is self-advocacy is a true luxury. And one of the other questions I usually ask airports considering sensory rooms is, whose voice are you listening to? Yep. What representative is that in terms of the overall feedback that you get? Because it might not be as representative as you think. And when you start to partner with clinicians or rehabilitation specialists, there's, at least in my part of the world, there's a big surprise that you would introduce a room that is non-supervised, that is otherwise for facilitative and therapeutic or clinical purposes. So I'm not an occupational therapist. That's just what some of our partners have said. So I'll stop there. Perfect.
Well, thank you, Kirk, for letting us know where you stand on this topic. I'd like to go back to Pia on the left, on my right, sorry. How can we make airports become the most accessible travel hubs in the 2030s? So we're already there almost, considering we're in 2025. Any thoughts on how we can make airports the most accessible travel hubs?
That is actually what I spend a lot of my time on at work. Frankly, I think if you want airports to be the most accessible hubs, you just tear it down and have to build the whole thing new. Realistically, if you want to be as accessible as you could possibly be. But that is not realistic. So what we do at Vienna Airport is we try to figure out workarounds. We try to figure out solutions and tools that we can provide people with to be more independent, to navigate the terminals by themselves, and to not require someone to actually help them over the barriers that we have inadvertently, unconsciously created in our terminals. So I think figuring out what are feasible solutions that work for passengers with all different kinds of disabilities to provide them with that autonomy, I think that's the way we need to go, and be realistic about how accessible you can be without building a whole new terminal.
Interested also to hear from you, Fatma, on how to make airports the most accessible travel hubs.
I share the sentiment with Pia, so you're definitely right. We don't have the privileged to build a new terminal or a new airport, but what we can do and what we've done in Dubai airports is creating an accessible strategy for the next 10 years. So as we work closely with a big community, it's always good to work towards a centered vision. So to do that, we look at the journey, like I said, from curb to gate. We dissect the journey, we continuously map the journey, and part of the essence of what we provide is to provide a seamless experience and suitable services across all the different disabilities. So as we know, in the UAE, we have 11 classified disabilities. In Dubai airports, we've combined the common needs and behaviors, and now we have 5 main categories. So what we try to build for the next 5 years is to have a service offering that caters to all these different disabilities. At the same time, we relook at the journey again and again and see how we can make it more barrier-free, how we can improve it. So there are soft things and there are hard things. So not everything you are going to work on is going to be a service. Sometimes it's just a process amendment. Sometimes you look into signage. Sometimes you look into wayfinding. So it's a lot of these elements that you continue working with the POD community, with the experts, with the government to see what can be improved. And at the same time, it's so important to look into best practices, not only from the aviation industry, even across what are technologies that are being developed, certain innovations. And you'd be shocked sometimes how little things have the biggest impact. I was just talking today about a process that we changed, which is a priority boarding. Earlier on in aviation, people with disability tend to board last because our major category was people with physical disabilities and wheelchairs. So when we talk to different communities, like people with hidden disabilities and autism, they prefer to be boarded last. So it's just sometimes giving a choice, it's what changes an experience. So sometimes people dwell or, delay certain changes because you think about budgets, how to corporately navigate that. But sometimes it's just a simple conversation with the community across your own stakeholders that could make such a big difference.
And I'd like to add something on
Yes.
here. I'm not sure if everyone in this room has heard of the European Accessibility Act. It's a piece of legislation that came into effect at the end of June this year. And I think that is also going to be very instrumental across Europe in providing the consistency we need to have somewhat of a reliable airport experience going into the 2030s, because that's when we will really see the effects of this law. So what this law is concerned with is the digital accessibility, meaning how can people with different kinds of disabilities use digital services, including self-service kiosks? So that is, again, about promoting the independence and the autonomy of people with disabilities, going through airports by themselves without having someone do everything for them.
Yes, thanks for adding on to the answer provided before. So making airports travel hubs that are accessible means also investing in people, investing in those who are offering assistance when needed, investing in those who are in contact with the traveling public. So I'd like to turn to Duncan now to tell us more about how are you investing in airport training programs and education, creating awareness to your staff, just the front staff, frontline staff, or everyone actually at the airport?
Yeah, sure. So down in Abu Dhabi, Zayed International, so we in guest experience, we've recently set up a new kind of training group. So we have 3 guest experience members of staff that concentrate on training, not just disability and accessibility awareness, but also customer service, security awareness. So lots of different subjects. But alongside that, we take information and take advice from the POD community, from the organisations that we work with. And we also look to experts in the field and look to bring that knowledge and information into the airport so we can share it, again, not just with our Abu Dhabi airport staff, but our stakeholders. So whether that is from food and beverage, retail, security, immigration. So we want everybody across the airport to have that same awareness and that same understanding. So it's great that we now have this focus. And the team that head that up have launched a joint training working group, which meet every 2 weeks. And they will discuss with the stakeholders what works for them, because obviously, to be able to deliver training, you need the buy-in for them to provide the staff and bring them out of the operation, which obviously has, its own costs and own kind of issues, or it can face issues. So we're really grateful to our kind of stakeholders that have bought into this with us, and they're telling us what works for them. So for us to simply say, okay, well, we need 10 of your staff for 8 hours of training, it's not really going to work operationally. So what we've done is speak to them and say, okay, well, what does work? Can you give us 10 staff for 2 hours, 3 hours, and then we can look at what we can train and what they're able to digest and things within that time frame. On top of that, obviously, investment. So I'm sure most folks are in the room aware of programs like the Hidden Disability Sunflower. So that comes, obviously we invest in that program. That ensures, that you need to be able to train staff, and the training's not intense by any stretch of the imagination. It's a very light but impactful training. In addition, there's organizations that we're looking to start training. So, for example, IBCCS, they deliver autism accreditation training. So, I believe our friends at Dubai here have been on a really good journey with those, and we're kind of having a chat with them and seeing, because that's, again, something really important to us is to look at specific disabilities and, and get that understanding across the airport community, really. And with that, obviously, hopefully, that message spreads out to the community, and they understand that if they travel through Abu Dhabi Airport or Dubai Airport, they know that their journeys will be supported and people understand. So.
Anyone would like to add on training? Fatma, I see your mic there.
I think training is just so important. Sometimes we think about infrastructure and services and processes, but what enables all of that is the people delivering it. So in Dubai airports, before we start any major announcement or a product launch or a service launch, we always make sure that the people are ready. So as of today, I think we've trained more than 53,000 people across the whole sector, frontline staff and airport staff as well. So it's more than 12 entities. And this is the framework that we will continue to work on, because at the end of the day, you want to retain that same service level. You want to retain that consistency across. You don't want the passenger to have any dissected experience. So wherever touch point you'll be at, you will have the same level of understanding, the same level of service, across the whole thing. So it's one of the major enablers that the learning team in Dubai Airports has really supported us with.
Perfect. We talked about training. We've talked about making areas, calming areas, sensory rooms. So again, there's money attached to those initiatives usually. How are you, Pia and Fatma? To start, how are you, as airports, developing your business cases to ensure the investments are made to improve your facilities and becoming barrier-free airports? So maybe we can ask Pia if you want to start about your experience in business case.
So any type of accessibility initiative that an airport proposes is generally a massive investment, right? And with any investment, you would think about what's the return on investment, and that's the same way we approach accessibility initiatives. You can't say, well, we have to comply because this and that, or we want to go above the law, because what is the return on that? That is really hard to get budgets and, actually get the investment. But what does work for us is, what is the return? Figure out the return, figure out if you can quantify what it actually means in terms of the business. Like, for example, If we are shuffling people with disabilities from A to B without having, without giving them the option to get a coffee on the way, we are missing out on their spending. So we are taking the opportunity from people with disabilities to spend money at our airport. And that's where the business case comes in. Can we quantify the spending that we're missing? And can we quantify how much spending we could be able to generate if we, invest in whichever solution we have that would provide more independence and autonomy to people with disabilities? So you're not framing it as this, well, I need money because there's a law, or we want to go above the law and it's the right thing to do. You're not saying you're doing this because of a moral obligation. You're doing it the corporate way. You're saying, well, this actually is a business case. And it can be really hard to find this business case, and it can be very hard to quantify it, but it is there, I promise. But also, it's really easy for us to figure out who else is benefiting from this other than people with disabilities. Are people with families also benefiting from this? People who maybe have very little experience in navigating airports, or people who have a language barrier. That's all types of people who don't have a disability, but have a barrier at our airport. And they will generally also benefit from this. So you can include them in the business case, and that will sort of give you this actual monetary benefit that you need to get an investment.
These are pretty much my points as well. I just have a few things to add on to that. So like I've said a little bit earlier, part of the business cases is attaching it to the vision. Like we said, we want to be the best accessible airport by 2025 for both DXB and DWC. So that helps a lot with all the different investments and all the business cases that we do. I think another addition that we have as Dubai Airports is that the government are championing that. So there's a lot of support that comes from the government to create that seamless experience for persons with disabilities across all different industries, yani aviation and tourism being one of the main key points, but everything within the city is also a priority. I love how in Dubai Airports we work very closely with the city, so it's a whole experience. The guest gets the first and last impression with Dubai Airports, so that we're so keen to have that seamless experience across the whole city. Great work has been done by Department of Economy and Tourism and across the whole sector. So what we do as well, I think, and it works very well for us in Dubai Airports, is that us and the stakeholders and the entire 1DXB community, we share a common vision. And part of the vision is not only being fully accessible, it's providing that unbeatable service level. So like Pia has said, it's just won't benefit only persons with disabilities. It would benefit a lot of the different segmentations of the guests. So you'll have elderly, people with families, people with illnesses, and others. So investing in the guest journey, I think, is what supports us in exceeding with the accessibility investments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you both for enlightening us on these elements. People have comments sometimes. Things go well, things don't go as well, and people might have comments about their experience. So it's good to listen. It's good to take on these comments and improve, or the other way around, to congratulate members who did a great job. I'd like to hear from Duncan first, and then Pia. As an airport operator, how are you keeping track of passenger comments? Are you keeping track of passenger comments first? And if so, how are you doing that? How are you managing maybe social media these days, which is also a mode of communication that is spreading quickly, the good and the bad? So maybe Duncan, what are your thoughts on that?
In short, yes, definitely keeping track of comments and feedback. It's hugely important. I think any business, would be silly not to. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously, with airports being such a key kind of transport hub and key to many people's lives, it's really important that we kind of understand what our customers are thinking, and taking on board what they're telling us. So we have a number of methods for that. Obviously, you mentioned social media. We obviously have our comms team. We have our feedback team also that sits within guest experience. And they will monitor the feedback that comes through, and they will respond accordingly. We have feedback sections on our website. Obviously, we have our social media channels. Throughout the airports, we also have opportunity for customers to give feedback there and then. So we have a QR code system, so passengers can simply scan, and at that particular point, they can give us feedback, where they are and what's happening. So on top of that, obviously, we're also part of the ACI ASQ, which, for those that don't know, Airports Council International have an initiative for airports to kind of strive to be the best, obviously, and a lot of that is based on surveying our guests. So we have a team of people that go around every day and select various passengers from various different destinations to gather their feedback, and it allows us to then, make changes and understand what improvements we could make, what we're doing well, and also, these kind of feedback initiatives allow us to kind of see, if we have staff members, specific staff members that are delivering a great service, then it's really important that we recognize and reward those. So, we have reward and recognition schemes in place at the airport as well. And so, yeah, in answer, yes, we monitor very closely, and it's of huge importance to us.
What about you, Pia, in Vienna?
I think it's very similar to what Duncan is saying that Abu Dhabi is doing. For us, we try to get different feedbacks from different channels for all of our passengers, and it can be very hard to get that feedback from people with disabilities when you're conducting a survey, because your sample size will likely not include a person with a disability if you're just asking departing passengers at the airport. And that's why social media is so important for us, because that's where you actually have all of these comments and you have all of these feedbacks. So at Vienna Airport, we use an AI to analyze thousands of feedbacks on a monthly basis, and we categorize them, but we also use a research bot very similar to ChatGPT, where we can ask about very specific issues, and then it will just spit out all of the reviews and all of the comments and feedbacks that we have gotten for this issue. And that really allows us to see patterns when it comes to accessibility topics and see whether that was a one-off where something was, not functioning the way it should have, or whether this is something that keeps happening and that we need to address. So social media, a hugely important tool, and a lot of people here on the panels earlier mentioned social media as a research tool before you're going on a trip, and I think that's a really interesting thing, because we do something similar where we will look at, what are creators saying about Vienna Airport. And you also have a lot of creators that are disabled and that travel, and they will, create videos about Vienna Airport, and you can just look at the location tags, and the insights you get from those are also really incredible as well. So absolutely valuable. Look at all of your social media people.
A lot of information can be captured by looking at the media, social media, and passenger comments to improve, absolutely. We're at our final question already. Time flies. Pia, I'd like to continue with you about creating advocacy groups. I think Vienna Airport, you mentioned previously in our preparation call that I think it's been since 2012 that you had an advocacy or a community group created at Vienna Airport. Could you explain to us a little bit why this was created and the circumstances around why this was created? And maybe tell us more about how you're able to balance experience in airport design with comments from people with lived experience that sometimes might not have this experience in airport operations or in aviation in general. So, and if you can give us some insights on that, and then we'll conclude as well with the same question for my friend Kirk right here.
So Vienna Airport opened Terminal 3 in 2012, and it was, by quite a few measures, a disaster, and accessibility was the one that you just saw all over the media. So that forced us to, actually deal with this topic. And that's when we started regular meetings with advocacy groups and subject matter experts. So these have been ongoing since 2012. Obviously, in the beginning, they were on a monthly basis, and it was just a checklist of topics that we were working on, and that went on for a few years until we got to a point where actually said, hey, actually, we've turned this thing around, and we'll probably never be able to fix the infrastructure completely without tearing it down. But we actually have a few things going on there that make us a best practice in these topics. For example, the signage. And that's things that we developed together with the groups. And also what we've done the past few years is we've expanded the groups. So from, having just people with reduced mobility in the groups and, focusing on, is this wheelchair accessible? Will a person who's blind or has low vision be able to use this? Or a person who's deaf? How do we include all of the invisible disabilities? And that has also, I think, been really, really important for us. We've had an instance with someone who was really struggling to get to, their departure gate because they were afraid of small spaces. And by the European definition, that person doesn't have reduced mobility and wouldn't require assisted travel service. But that person said that the staircase was too narrow, the escalator was too narrow, the elevator was too narrow. So how do you get this person to their aircraft if they don't have a disability in the legal sense? And that's why it's so important to include hidden disabilities. And it's not just, cognitive disabilities, but it's also having, mental health be a really important issue here. And again, it's going to be something where a lot of people with different kind of issues will actually benefit. So it really improves the experience for all passengers. So I would really recommend, getting a group of people where you have experts, where you have advocacy groups, and where you have people with lived experience, and be very open and including them along every step. So we are opening a new terminal in 2 years, and 2 years ago, we started including them in the discussions on this topic. So now we are doing, around twice a year meetings and telling them this is the current planning stage we're in. These are our thoughts. These are the products we think we will be implementing. This is the way, passengers will move around. Let us know your thoughts. And also presenting them the different options that we are weighing, that we are considering, and making sure we get their feedback before decisions are made. And then just having that on a rolling basis, and the more detailed you get in your planning, the more you go into detail with these groups. And it's been really valuable for us so far, and we're really excited to open a new terminal in 2 years, and I think it's going to be very different to what we opened in 2012.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that with an example very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, but San Antonio is a great example of an airport that's designing a new terminal. It's going to be opening in a few years now. But we partnered with them to set up a universal design focus group specific to that project, because I think the problem that a lot of airports have is, at what point do you bring in people with lived experience? And is it at a 10% drawing? Is it at a rendering? Is it at a 30% drawing? And in some cases, drawings or architectural materials aren't even accessible with JAWS or screen readers or whatever the case might be. And so, I think that's a question that needs to be constantly asked, but certainly the nothing about us without us principle must apply moving forward. And I think there's some great examples of airports doing just that.
You stole my sentence, nothing about us without us. So thank you very much to the four of you today to come over and speak about your experience as airport operators, as airport designers or consultancy.